Hi players, bonjour from Paris, my name is Asaf and welcome to my channel Easy Board Games. Today I'm going to show you how to play the warp that was designed by Thomas Snauwaert, did I pronounce it correctly, and was published by Jumping Turtle Games. A huge thank you for Thomas that actually took his time to verify the video before releasing it. Thank you very much, I truly appreciate it. Ready to see how we play? Let's go to setup. Alright guys, so in terms of setup, the first thing that we're going to do is put the central zone at the center of the table. Now, according to how many players are going to participate, we're going to lay down the player zones that are completely identical. Just what we need to make sure is that all the tiles are facing the same side. In our case, it's going to be side A. Now, when you're going to attach the player zone to the central zone, make sure that over here, as you can see, number 1 is with the arrow that is pointing directly over here. The next player zone is going to be attached to the first one and also to the central zone. So make sure that number 1 is pointing directly at this location again. And after that, the connecting zone we're going to put right over here. Then we'll need to put the wormhole token, the ones that you can see right over here, in this position. So players will be able, as we're going to see a little bit later, to pass either over here or through the wormhole. So let's start from the corner right over here. We're going to take all the archives cards, we're going to give them a good shuffle, and we're going to draw 4 cards facing up. Then we're going to shuffle all the alien race cards, we're going to draw 2 of them. Then from the shuffled face down exile tokens that we can see right over here, we're going to draw 1 randomly to put on the first exiled card. If it was yellow, on the other one we're going to put the green one, and vice versa. Over here we have a few tokens that we'll talk about later. We're going to have the combat dice. Some of them are for the defense and some of them are for the attack. Then we're going to take the 3 pile of cards that we can see over here that are called the mission cards. We're going to give them a good shuffle, and from each one of them we're going to draw 1 card, putting it face up. After that we're going to take the pioneering missions as indicated in the rulebook, so it has to be these specific pioneering missions, and we're going to place them face up. Next to them we're going to take the 36 reward cards, give them a good shuffle, and placing them face down in a pile. After that we're going to have the end of game card that we can see right over here, and depends on how many players you're going to have that you're going to decide which side is going to face up. Since this is a 2-player game, we're going to have this side facing up. Right over here we already talked about the exile tokens, but also we're going to have these 42 multiplier tokens that also are going to stay as the supply next to the board. Over here we have some buildings that we'll see a little bit later, and we have here the mission point tokens. The last thing is to have all the resources, the energy cubes and the gold nuggets, right over here, but I'm going to put this off the screen since this is not so important for now. Regarding the player setup, we're going to do a few things. First of all, we're going to take the supply board in the chosen color, and we're going to take the screen in order to hide whatever there is to from the other players. Then from each deck of the mission cards, we're going to draw 2 cards, and each player is going to choose 3 of those. So after a player has chosen 3, we're going to shuffle the other cards in their respective decks. Then each player is going to receive 1 of these archive cards that is marked with start, and they're going to draw 4 archive cards. Now, everything that you can see behind the screen is information that needs to stay hidden from the other players. What does not need to stay hidden from the other players is the player board that we're going to take in the same color, and we're going to take 1 of these marker cubes, putting them in the first position in each track. After that, each player is going to take all the pieces in their color, and they're going to place 1 building of each type in their home zone, alongside with 3 troops, and also next to it we're going to put another troop. Now we can flip to the other side the tokens that are adjacent to the areas that we control. We're going to see it a little bit later, but areas that we control considered areas that we have at least 1 troop in them. So obviously all of these tokens need to be revealed, and the same thing we're going to do for the blue player. Next we're going to have a draft of the alien races. So in a 2-player game we're going to have 2 piles of 3 cards, and one player is going to choose one alien race and going to pass it to the other player. The other player is going to do the same thing, and then again we're going to have another choice. The last two cards that were not chosen, we're going to give it to the last player. So let's say that the red player is going to be the starting player. So the other player, the blue one, is going to receive these two cards, and from them he's going to choose one of them to be the Warp Guardian. Now, after we have chosen which card is going to be the Warp Guardian, we're going to look for the same alien in the other deck of cards that we have with this back, and we're going to put it just on top of that. Then we're going to mix the 10 ability tokens that have the question mark at their back, and we're going to draw two randomly to put on the Warp Guardian. So this is the first token, and this is going to be the second one. The last thing that we're going to do is to give the different resources, so that is according to how many players and which one is the first one. At the top of page 6, you can find a table that is indicating how many resources does each player has to take. So the first player is going to take 4 gold and 4 energy. The second player is going to take 5 gold and 4 energy, and so on. Also, this is something that I failed to mention before. According to this table, we're going to see how many of these archive cards each player is going to take. So the first player, the second, and even the third player, each are going to have 4 archive cards. In the warp, each player is going to take control over 2 alien races, and each player is going to do a series of actions. We're going to have round after round. This is not a game that is limited by any measure of time. And the goal is to have the most mission points as possible. In each turn, we're going to have 3 phases. The first one is the income phase, where we can get either resources or troops. After that, we're going to consult, which we're going to discard some of these archive cards, maybe to get some resources. Then we're going to draw cards. In the second phase, we'll be able to choose one of 3 actions, either the develop, which will allow us to upgrade the different buildings or build new ones. The other option is to change the landscape, we can say it like that, on the board itself, and that means changing all the numbers that we can see right over here. And the third option will be to attack. After we have finished that, the third and last phase is the end phase, where we're going to be able to move some of our troops, reveal some of the exile tokens if we need to, and we'll be able also to replenish missions if we have finished some of them. Now, as you can see, different missions have different values of points that a player can earn, and the end game is going to be triggered once one of the players have reached 9 of these points. At this point, the end game is going to be triggered, and we're going to play 3 full last rounds. At the end of the third full round, the player that has the most points is going to be declared as the winner. In the income phase, the first thing that we're going to do is to extract. We'll be able to either gather resources or to deploy new troops into the board. Let's start with the first option, and that is collecting resources. So as you can see right over here, we have 2 tracks that are indicating how many resources we'll be able to take. Right now, the track of the gold and of the energy indicate 1 per each. So that means that if the red player decides to take this action, he will be able to take 1 gold and 1 energy from the supply, and they will put it behind the screen on the supply board. So 1 gold and 1 energy. Later, when we'll talk about upgrading and building new buildings, we'll see how we can advance on either one of these tracks. The other thing that a player will be able to do if they chose not to take these resources is to recruit new troops, and that means to take a troop from their supply, and now they have 2 options. The first option is to put one of these troops on the board in an area that they already control. So an area is considered controlled, as we said before, if a player already has at least 1 troop in them. In our case of the red player, it's going to be either over here or over here. Pay attention that an area will never be able to hold more than 4 troops. As an alternative, a player will be able to take one of these troops from his supply and put it in his troop reserve that we can see right over here. So you might ask yourself, why should a player do that? And the answer to that is that in a later turn, in that specific phase, the income phase, when you're doing the extract, even if you have chosen the troops or the resources, you'll be able to deploy all the troops that you have over here behind your screen onto the board. After we have finished the extract, we're going to do something that is called consult. So that means that we can choose up to 3 of the archive cards that we have in our possession. And again, of course, this is something that is hidden from the other players, and we'll be able to discard them. When we're discarding these cards, we will take the resources that are marked at the bottom left corner of that card. After that, and it doesn't matter if a player decided to discard or not, they're going to draw 2 of these archive cards. Now you have the possibility to either draw from the face down pile, as we can see right over here, or from one of the 4 cards that are in the offering row. Here I would like to add 2 things. First of all, you can never have more than 8 cards in your hand, and that means that if you have already 7, you're going to draw only 1 of these cards. And the second thing is that if a player has decided to take a card from the offering right over here, he's going to replenish that card only after they have finished taking both of the cards. In this phase, the player will be able to choose one of 3 options, either develop or Terrashift or to attack. When a player chooses the develop option, he can play 2 types of cards. The first one is the upgrade one, and the second one is the build card. So let's concentrate right now on the build option and see which kind of buildings a player will be able to build and where. On this card, for example, we have the possibility to build these 3 buildings. We need to choose one of them and pay the resource cost, as we can see on the right side, -1 resource since we are the active player. Why is that important? Because later we will see that the other players will be able to do something that is called follow, but we'll get to that. The only restrictions that we have when we're building is that some of the buildings will be able to build only in a specific area. For example, a mine will be able to build only in an area that contains at least one of these symbols that we can see right over here, or an energy plant that will have to build in an area that indicates this blue icon right over here. The second restriction is that we can never have more than 4 buildings in one area. And the third restriction is that we cannot have more than 1 type of building in an area unless it is stated on the area itself. For example, in this area right over here, we can build 2 energy plants. The first building that we can build is the command center, and each command center will allow us to advance on the command track. So if, for example, the red player will decide to build one of these command centers, he will be able to take this marker and move it from number 1 to number 2. The more we advance on this track, the more troops we'll be able to deploy when we have the extract phase. The second building that we have is the gold mine, and for each gold mine we'll be able to advance the gold track 1 step, and that is something that of course will help us when we're gathering resources. The same thing we're going to have with the energy plant and the energy track right over here. So again, more resources. The fourth and last building in a player's color is the trade post. For each trade post, we're going to advance the trade track 1 step ahead. So let's talk about one element of the trade, and the second one will come further down the road. Once during their own turn and at any phase, a player will be able to perform a trade. So the trade will be gold for energy or vice versa, and the ratio will be 1:1. The trade itself will be from the player to the supply and not between the players themselves. And the more we're going to advance, the more resources we'll be able to trade. The next building that we have is right over here, and that is the laser cannon. And when we're placing it in a specific area, we'll have the possibility to shoot down an enemy unit. The restrictions are that we're going to have a maximum of 2 areas away of a range, okay? And the target must be visible. Visible means that the token is flipped face up and not face down. So in this case, of course, the laser cannon will be able to target either this area or this one. We can do this at any phase that we want, besides when we're having combat. Another restriction that we have is that with the laser cannon, we cannot target the warp gate, which is this area right over here that we'll talk about a little bit later. We cannot target a colony areas, that means the home area of a certain player. And we will not be able to target an area that contains a sentry tower that we'll see just in a few more minutes. When a player decides to target one of the enemies, he will need to choose if to pay 1 energy or 2. According to that, they will roll 1 die or 2 dice, and any result of 4 and higher, that means 4, 5, or 6, that means 1 damage. So just for the example, let's say that the red player target this area right over here. Since you can see that over here we have 3 enemy units, right? The token has 3 icons. That means that right now we have only 2. And we're going to indicate that by adding this token right over here. So instead of 3, we're going to have only 2. In case they targeted an area that contains only 1 enemy unit and they manage to kill it, then they will be able later to spread over to this area, but pay attention that they will not receive a reward card, which is something that we usually get when we're successfully conquering another area. The next building that we have is a sentry tower, so it's this one right over here. And when a player attacks from an area or defends an area holding a sentry tower, they will receive a bonus of +1 to the combat die on all the rolled combat dice during the combat itself. Pay attention that the value of a dice can never go more than 6 unless something different specifies it. Now, an area that contains one of these sentry towers, as we've seen before, is immune to attacks by a laser cannon and also by an assault ship. For the assault ship, I'm going to circle back to it later when we'll talk about combat. The second option that we have when we're resolving develop is to upgrade. So again, when we're using a card to upgrade, we need to choose one of the buildings that is stated on the card, pay the cost that we can see on the right, -1 resource reduction that the active player has. And then we're going to advance on the corresponding track as well. So basically the value of the track will be how many buildings does that specific player has, multiply it by the level of that specific building. So if the red player has 2 command centers and the command center already was upgraded to level 2, that means that 2 times 2 it is 4, and the value of the command track will be at 4. At some point when we're going to pass this threshold of the last segment on the track itself, we're going to have a specific bonus that is stated on the player board. At some point when we're reaching to number 12, that cube is going to remain locked on the rightmost part of the player board, and that means that even if a player is going to lose later buildings, that value is going to stay all the time on 12. After a player has resolved a develop, the other players going clockwise will be able to do something that is called follow. That means that they will be able to play a develop card as well, and it doesn't have to be the same develop card as the active player has played, but when they will resolve the action, they do not receive a discount. So again, after the red player has resolved the develop action, the blue player will be able to choose if he would like to do a build action or they would like to upgrade and so on. For each player that is executing this follow option, the active player is going to receive either 1 gold or 1 energy. The second possible action in this phase is the Terrashift. Now, as you can see on the board, we have different values in the different areas. That is something that is going to involve combat a little bit later. But for now, when a player is resolving the Terrashift, what they will be able to do is to choose 2 areas on the board. One of them they will take up and the other one they will take down. The only conditions are that these areas will not be controlled by other players. So the blue player, for example, will not be able to Terrashift this area right over here, right? Because it is controlled by the red player. And also they will not be able to touch the warp gate area. So for example, it's the blue player's turn right now, and he's going to choose this area right over here to take from 2 to 1, just like this by adding this token. And they're going to choose this area as well, and they're going to increase its value again by adding this token right over here. The other players again will be able to follow, but the thing is that the players who are following will need to choose only one area and not two areas like we've seen with the active player. And they will not be able to Terrashift an area that was already Terrashift in this specific round. For each player that decided to follow, the active player will be able to draw one of these archive cards either from the deck itself or one from the offering. The last possible action that a player can do in this phase is to attack. Now here we're going to have a certain procedure that we need to execute phase by phase. The first one is to select a target. So let's say that the red player would like to attack this area right over here that contains one unit of the yellow alien race. Now why do they say that? Because sometimes that specific race of the aliens, what we can see right over here, can have a specific effect that involves the combat. Now there are a lot of alien races, so we're not going to go over all of them, but just know that this is an option, so we always need to keep our eye open for the different abilities of the alien races. After the red player has chosen a specific target, of course they need to decide how many troops they're going to attack with. So pay attention that you always have to leave at least one troop behind. But over here we have only 3 troops, so the red player is going to attack with 2 of them, and that means that we're going to place them right over here. After that, the attacking player decides if they wish to play a combat card. Now, as you can see, the defender is going to be one of the alien races, so we're going to talk about the differences between this one and attacking another player soon enough. So the attacker first decides if they want to play a combat card, and they will choose one to put in front of them. So the red player decided to play this card right over here. Now, since the red player attacked one of the exiled alien races, the next player clockwise will be able to support them by playing one of their combat cards. It is not mandatory, and if that player does not want to, the choice will go to the next player in line until one player will decide to play this combat card or no players decided to play combat cards. In our case, the blue player does decide to support this unit right over here, and he's going to play a combat card facing down as well. The next phase in this combat is to bribe. Now the attacking player can offer to the supporting player a bribe in order to discard the chosen played card. Now this bribe can consist any number and any combination of gold, energy, or even troops, can be archive cards or even reward cards that we're going to see a little bit later. Now the attacking player is going to announce the offer only one time. So this is not one of these negotiation games or something like that. There's going to be only one offer, and the supporting player will have only 2 options. The first one is to say yes, that means accepting the bribe and discard this combat card. If they decline, they have the possibility to make one single counter offer. So again, there is no negotiation. Let's say that the red player offered 2 gold, the blue player says no, I want 2 gold and 2 energy. That's it, one counter offer. And then again, the red player can say yes or no. If they decided to say yes, then the red player is going to pay that price to the blue player. And if they decided to say no, then the 2 combat cards are going to stay as is, and we're going to move on to the next phase. The next phase in the combat is to reveal the cards, but pay attention that here we're not just going to flip it to the other side. Each player will have to hold in their hand already the amount of resources they decided to use for one of the options that we have on the combat card. So let's say, for example, that the red player decided to use the 3rd option in this combat card. When they're revealing this card, they will have to already hold in their hand the required resources. And of course, the defending player will have to do the same thing. Now pay attention that some of these cards have different effects. This card, for example, is only going to take place if the supporting unit or the side that you're playing for is losing. So there are, again, a lot of options. We're not going to go over all of them. But at the end of the rulebook, on pages 20 to 22, you have all the index with the different symbols, and it is very straightforward, so there's no difficulty over here. After we have revealed the cards, it's time to roll the dice. So this is again something that can happen simultaneously. The attacker will take combat dice as number of troops that they have sent. We're going to roll them, and we're going to multiply whatever we have over here by the number that we can see on the area that we've attacked from. So right over here we can see that 6 is going to be multiplied by 3, and that means that the result is 18. Now pay attention again that we have here different effects from the combat card. So here, for example, we can reroll up to 1 combat die, and this effect means that we can take the combat die and flip it exactly to the other side. So that means, for example, from 3, we're going to turn it to 4. So again, 7 times 3, that is 21. The defending player is going to roll 1 defense die, right? Because there is only 1 unit over here. And they're going to multiply it by the multiplier that we can see on this area, that is 16. So now after we have calculated, we can see that obviously this result is higher than this one. So that means that this combat card is in effect, right? And the supporting player is going to draw 3 archive cards. The result is that this unit is going to be destroyed, and what the victorious player is going to do is to draw one of these reward cards. This reward card we're going to put right over here behind the screen, and we'll have different things that we'll be able to do with it later. Another possible outcome is that the attacker side is going to lose, and in this case the attacking side needs to retreat back to the area that they attacked from, and also lose one of their troops. They're going to put it back in their general supply. Now, since over here we had a supporting player, that supporting player is going to receive 2 of these reward cards. Now let's see a different situation if we would have had, of course, a player that is attacking another player. So again, the red player is going to attack this area right over here. So he's going to do it with 2 cards. Again, we're going to have the same thing. That means that the attacking player is going to choose 1 combat card and put it face down. Then the defender is going to do the same thing if they wishes to. We're going to have here the bribe option, so no changes over here. We would have had the dice rolling and also resolving everything. And if the attacker is the winner in this case, then of course this unit is being destroyed, going back to the supply of the blue player. And also pay attention that right now the red player took control of this area that holds a command center of the blue player. In this case, the blue player's structure is going to go back to their supply, and the red player is going to put a command center in their color. Now pay attention that now, since we have changes in the amount of structures of a specific type from both of the players, we will need to adjust our player board. Don't forget just a few things. For example, one of these tokens that indicates that this enemy is going to throw only 2 dice, right? Because we have already killed a unit over here in a previous round with the laser cannon. And also pay attention to these wormholes that actually make these 2 areas adjacent. Now that we understand combat a little bit, let's go back talking about the assault ship. So first of all, an assault ship does not consider to be a unit. This is a building. And let's take a small example. First of all, when we're building an assault ship, the line of sight is going to be increased by 1. So that means that we're going to reveal the tokens that we can see over here. So if we would have had a laser cannon right over here, now we can shoot at these tokens. When you decide to perform an attack with the assault ship, we can attack not only the adjacent areas, but actually areas that are 2 areas away from us. In this case, it can be this one, or this one. So if we're attacking, for example, from this area to this one, the assault ship is going to move with the troops. So we're going to have one, the assault ship, and also another troop. And the thing is that the multiplier when we're attacking with an assault ship depends only on the level of the assault ship. As you can see right over here, the level of the assault ship is 1. That means that the multiplier is 2. And we're going to completely ignore from the multiplier that we can find on the area that we attacked from. Pay attention that when an area is being attacked and contains this assault ship, the assault ship has no effect on the multiplier of this area. In this phase, we're going to have 3 things that we can do. The active player may perform up to 2 troop movements, and that means that you can move your troops from any controlled area that you have to any controlled area that you have. Pay attention again, of course, that you always have to leave in each area at least 1 troop, and the areas have to be interconnected. So just for the example, let's say that we have this situation right over here. I don't know how we got that, but let's just say that it's like that. The red player will not be able to move this troop from this area to this one since they are not interconnected. In this move step, we can also move the assault ships if we're moving at least 1 troop with them. When an area doesn't contain any more troops or exiled troops, and that area is adjacent to an area they already control, then the movement can be to that specific area. But of course, pay attention that since we have not conquered that area in combat, we will not take one of the reward cards. The next step will be to reveal the exiled tokens. So we remember that we're going to reveal all the tokens that are adjacent to our areas, unless we're going to have the spaceship. So in this case, we're going to reveal this token right over here since it is adjacent to our newly controlled area, and also this token right over here. The last step that we're going to have at the end phase is to replenish the different mission cards. So we're going to talk about the mission cards in the next part of the video, but in this case, let's say that we have only 2 mission cards. We'll be able to pay either 1 gold or 1 energy in order to draw another mission card. Players will be able to complete the missions that we have on the cards at any point of the game, even if it's not their turn. We can find mission cards in 3 locations. The first one is the missions that we have right over here. So at any point of the game, we're going to have a mission card that is open, unless of course one of the players have accomplished one of these missions in their turn. In that case, we're going to replenish it only at the end phase of that specific player. The second location of missions is what we can see over here. Those are the pioneering missions. Those are usually more of the long-term missions that the players will aspire to complete. And also right over here, as we can see at the player's disposal, again, I remind you that these cards are staying hidden from the other players, and those also a player will be able to accomplish at any point of the game. Now, when a player wants to accomplish a mission, the only thing that they have to do is to declare that they're finishing one of the missions. They need to show, of course, that they're holding the criteria that we can see on the card itself. Each player, as we've said at the beginning of the game, is going to control 2 races of aliens. On these cards, what we can see beyond the beautiful art of Albert Urmanov, we can see at the bottom part of the cards 2 parts. The left part is an active ability. This is something that is always going to be active, so this is something that we need to pay attention to. And also pay attention that even for the exiled alien races, we have something that is going to affect all the players in terms of the active ability. So again, for these 2 aliens that the player has, it's going to affect only that specific player. But whatever we have over here with the exiled aliens, this is something that is going to affect all of the players. On the bottom right side, we have something that is called the reward effects. Now, if you remember, every time that we're winning a combat, either as the attacker or as the defender, we're going to receive between 1 or 2 of these reward cards. So with these reward cards, we can do two things. Either we're going to discard them at any part of our turn to receive the bonus that we have on the face downside, or we can use those cards in order to pay the cost and trigger the reward effect. Now, usually these reward effects are much stronger, so pay attention to use it only when you really need to. The last thing that I want to talk about before wrapping up this video is the warp gate that we can see on the board right over here. Now, a different way to achieve more mission points is to capture the warp gate. But of course, it's not going to be an easy mission because we have the warp guardian, which is the alien that was chosen during setup. Now, when we want to attack this warp guardian, basically we're going to follow the same rules as we've seen in the normal combat, but we're going to have a few differences. First of all, the number of defense dice and the area combat multiplier are marked on the warp guardian, just like we can see right over here. The second thing is that the attacker may play up to 2 combat cards, and the supporting combat card limit is still the total of 1 card, so this is the advantage for the attacker. The third difference is that we need to apply the different abilities that we have drawn randomly during setup and are right now on the card of the Warp Guardian. The last difference is that the Guardian cannot be targeted by the laser cannons that we've seen before. When a player has managed to conquer the Warp Gate, they're going to immediately gain the Conquer mission points. That is what we can find right over here at the top left part of the card. So here, in this case, it's going to be 3 points. The conquering player will only be able to place over here the amount of troops equal to or lower than the number of combat dice used by the defeated Warp Guardian. So that means, as you can see right over here, that the Guardian has used 3 combat dice. That means that we will not be able to put here more than 3 troops. If the player remains in control of the Warp Gate area, they will gain the turn mission points at the start of their turn. Also, if we're going to have another player attacking this area, the attacker will be able to profit from 2 combat cards like we've seen before. But the thing is that the defender is going to profit from the abilities that we've seen here of the Guardian. The difference is that in this case, if the blue player is going to win, they're not going to receive the 3 points of the Conquer as we've seen before after defeating for the first time the Warp Guardian. When the game ends, the player in control of the Warp Gate will gain the end mission points. Pay attention that on some Guardians, we're going to have different colors. And that means that this Guardian is going to grant you either Conquer, Turn, or End mission points based on the number of already completed mission cards. And that will be color-coded, as we can see right over here, with Tavma Morphlings. I hope that I pronounced it correctly. And we can see that here with the Conquer, it will be according to the progress missions that we've finished. Over here with the turn, it's going to be based on the conquest missions. And here with the green, it will be according to the prosperity missions. And that's it. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the time. Take care, and I'll see you next time.